came out the interview thinking that it didn't go very well. I didn't come across very well, and that there's no way I'm going to be accepted anywhere with Careforce. So when I did get the letter, I really knew that this was God's hand in it, that, you know, he was directing me this way.
I'm really looking forward to being part of a church and to working in it. It's something I haven't really done before. And I'm hoping there'll be a chance for my own faith to grow, away from the pressures, perhaps, of university life.
Well, I'm scared of being lonely. I don't like not having people around me, having spent 8 years in a community of about 300 people.
Fairmile Court is a Christian conference centre in Surrey. 60 young people have gathered here to take part in a 3-day course organised by Careforce. This is a Christian organisation which gives young people an opportunity to work for a year in churches and organisations in areas right outside the realm of their present experience.
The volunteers are either school leavers or graduates awaiting further education. They must be prepared to go wherever Careforce thinks they'll be most useful.
We're here because we're Christians, and we believe we should be going to serve the Lord in different places, often very different from any experience we've ever had before. So why do we get you together at this stage of this course and this year at a place like this? Many of you will not have worked for an employer in any sense for very long before. Well, you have a year ahead of you where you've got to learn the disciplines and the opportunities of that sort of work. And I want to stress right from the start that we recognise the spiritual foundation on which Careforce is built. As a volunteer, your prime objective is first and foremost to serve the Lord, to get to know him better, to grow in your Christian faith.
Janis Warren comes from Ulster. She's a graduate librarian, and Careforce have placed her in inner city Manchester. Like all the volunteers, she's already had the opportunity to visit her new place of work and prospective employer before finally committing herself.
Well, when I arrived, I thought, how am I going to cope in this situation? But I feel that you can look at situations and you can let them dominate, but you've got to look to God and believe he'll take you through it. And just as Peter, when he's walking on the waves, he looked at the waves around him and took his eyes off Christ, and when that happened, he began to sink.
Guy Donegan Cross has just left Monkton Combe, a public school with a strong Christian tradition.
I want to become a more rounded person, and I want to get closer to God. I've had a fairly cushy time as far as being a Christian goes so far, with lots of teaching and everything. But I think it's time to put my faith into practice, you know, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that and trusting in God for things.
Janice Morrison lives in the London borough of Hackney. Her Careforce placement will involve working with Torch Trust for the Blind in a village in Leicestershire.
I've hardly ever met with blind people, and I've never ever worked with them before.
Phillip Thompson was one of the founders of Careforce. He was also its organising secretary for 6 years.
Really, you're looking for a degree of maturity in proportion to their age, and I know it's an old-fashioned word, but guts as much as anything. You can get a 18-year-old who really is quite mature. You can get a 21, 22-year-old who you feel is still wet behind the ears. And I'm sometimes abrasive with people who finish their studies without any idea of what they're going to do in life. And you get the impression, well, they think the world owes them a living, and somebody's got to tell them it doesn't. We really are looking for people who feel some sense of calling from God, that they should give service to others during that time. For most of them, this is going to be entirely new. The area is going to be entirely new anyway. The environment is going to be new. The kind of job they've got to do is going to be entirely new. So it's going to be a fairly traumatic experience for them.
Comes as quite a shock to some of them, do you think?
I think it comes as a great shock.
Janis Warren is the graduate librarian from Ulster. She found herself placed here in the parish of St Bride's, Old Trafford in Manchester. Tell me a bit, Janice, about what the parish is like.
It's a very mixed parish. We've got a lot of old people living in the area. Some of them have lived here for years. And now, as well as that, we've got a lot of ethnic minorities, people from the West Indies, Pakistan, and quite a few Irish and Polish people as well. And this is our parish church, St Bride's.
What sort of things have you been doing, Janice?
Well, my work is divided into two. I work with the children, I teach in Sunday school, help at a play group and a youth group as well. And then with old people, visiting the elderly in the area, Bible study with some of them.
The last time I spoke to you, you said you were a bit afraid that you weren't going to cope. How's that working out?
It's working out really well. God has been good to me in so many situations. There's so many problems, and I know that they have the problems in Ulster as well. But where I come from, I haven't had to come up against them. You know, problems with people who are unemployed, have been unemployed for 3 years. I have never had to deal with that before, and it's really hard to identify with people like that. The first time here is an experience I'll never forget. I got into the lift, pressed for the 6th floor, and sang and prayed my way up. I was really nervous. And when I got out of the lift, I took a wrong turning. Well, see, the lifts are working again today, Phyllis. That's good news. The odd number lifts were off, but the even ones are back on again.
It was the even one off yesterday.
Yes. So you'll be able to get down to the centre.
Centre today, yes.
So what's on this afternoon?
The New Faces Club.
Oh, right. So what happens at it?
I'm very fond of Janice.
Why is that?
She's like one of the family. Well, I mean, I've got no one, you know. I'm a learner now. I'm on my own. So I'm grateful for anybody coming, you know.
So have the Meals and Wheels been?
Yes. Had my dinner.
Oh, good.
She prays. No, she's a friendly girl, you know. She's it's a comfort, you know, to have somebody to come to see you.
So has she done your shopping for you?
No, tomorrow.
Is there anything you need me to get?
No, thank you very much.
So you're okay for that? You learn a lot about yourself on this placement, and not all of it's nice, but you learn to listen to people and to try and understand them more rather than give them an answer and to categorise them. I think that people can label you as a goody-goody, someone who's come along and wants to do all these good works, but the prime reason why I'm here is to serve God in whatever way that may come about.
When Clive was speaking to you yesterday, you probably were realising what gifts you're going to bring into your communities. You're probably scratching your head thinking, oh no, what can I give to all these people?
Phil Stone is training to be an Anglican minister. He's part of the Careforce team, preparing volunteers for their year's work.
And, Christians always have something to say. You find whenever you're in a bunch of Christians, they're always speaking. But the most important thing you're going to have to learn in your communities, which you're going into, is that of listening, being an active listener. Well, those leaving school, coming straight to Careforce, do need a lot of courage, I believe, especially if they're coming from suburbia or a rural area, coming into inner city. For one thing, they just do not know really anything about what they're letting themselves in for. Those who are really committed spiritually, I think, will find that they'll have hidden resources, you know, and I think this will volunteers find out of the blue that they can do things and have got unknown depths of courage.
This is a far cry from public school, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. But it's what I wanted to do. I haven't found the great culture shock that, you know, we were taught to expect in a sense. Now, when I first came to Huddersfield, I reckon I was a bit spoiled coming from Bath. You know, it's a kind of the Georgian in your Roman city, and I thought this place didn't have much character. I think the character's really around the edges, all the villages around.
Have you been shocked by the deprivation that you've seen?
To a certain extent. It isn't as bad as it has been, I don't think, though I have been in a couple of houses where I felt really sad, you know, the state they were living in, and I felt privileged. It makes you realise how lucky you are, coming from a middle-class background with all the comforts.
So have you been to the football match?
You must be joking.
Why not?
Well, from what I've heard about Huddersfield Town, you might as well go and watch Tiddlywinks or something, you know. But then I'll probably get beaten in for that one. I have a number of set duties which I have to do each week. The manual side of the work was quite a thing to get used to. I didn't envisage it being such a large part of what I do. There's a lot of chair work to be done, putting things ready, communion. There's playgroup twice a week, putting that together and taking it apart again. There's a lot of youth work. I enjoy that. The lunches have been going for about 5 weeks now, and the purpose of it is to make contacts with people outside the church and eventually to be a base for evangelism. My role is to put out the chairs and tables and to clean up and help dry up and help hand out the meals and just to be around. The aim isn't to make money, it's just to cover the expenses and to have that contact with the community.
Hear that, Sarah? It's lovely.
I do a lot of visiting elderly folks and then any odd jobs that need doing, like posters or decorating sometimes, or babysitting, you know. He says he's giving up, but he's only cutting down.
I'm only up 2 all week.
It's bad for the kids.
How many's given up altogether then? Me, dog.
Well, do you know, every 5 that you have with the kids next year, he has 1.
Oh, I've heard that. Guy was a bit wary when he first met us. And he used to think that I would always take it mick. I used to mention his public school and his middle-class upbringing. I just did him under a joke, didn't we, you know? We used to call him a pious little prat and all sorts, didn't we? And he was a rich little sod and everything. And it don't affect us now, does it?
No, he just takes it like a spoonful of sugar.
No, when we're together, it's good, isn't it, though?
When he comes down in dumps, we just start talking and we have a prayer. And everything just seems all right again. Go away, come back next day, and if we're down again, he sort of just builds up all the time. It's just real.
Well, it's not only that way around, is it? I mean, I've come down here with my problems, and when I've got things on my mind, you know, to get them sorted out, we can share, and that's what makes it so good, to be able to share like that. As Christians, you're there to help each other, and that's what we're doing, isn't it?
What particular qualities do you look for in a Careforce worker?
Definitely somebody who's willing to learn. So I think being a Careforce worker is education in its very wide sense. So somebody who's willing to learn, and as one thing I've learnt with Guy, is maybe stressing a bit more in future, somebody who's willing to do almost every kind of job, whether it's cleaning the drains out or whatever. But I think it's somebody who's willing in themselves to change their characters, willing to learn, willing to allow God to change them.
You said in Cobham, Guy, you wanted to become a more rounded person. Have you?
Yeah, I think I have. I've put about a stone around the middle. But apart from that, I suppose as your experience grows, you'll become more rounded. I've had to face different situations which are totally alien to what I've been used to. I've had a prison visit since I've been here, and that's added to my experience. So, in that sense, I've become more rounded as well. Before, in my slightly sheltered situation, I thought I could cope with most things, and now I realise that there's a lot more that I'm happy to sit back and let older people deal with.
Now, you're only 18 yourself. How do you find working with teenagers?
I've got quite a dry sense of humour in some ways, sarcastic, and sometimes you can say something and it's a joke, but you get kind of, eh? You know, and it doesn't click at all. Or sometimes you can say something and they take really bad offence and you're left feeling a bit of a wally.
What about the moral attitudes of the young people? How do you cope with those?
There seems to be a lot of compromise up here. Well, single-parent families, you've got single parents in the church, and among the young people, there's a lot of partner swapping in relationships, which before I would have frowned on, you know. But then in a sense, I feel partner swapping, you are using the person, but then it's more like a game, an adventure for them at their stage, and I don't take it seriously now, whereas before I would have, you know, fretted and worried.
So you feel that's a compromise for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't want to compromise on my ideals. I don't want to compromise on my standards. But when you're dealing with other people, when you're getting alongside other people, if they've got things that you don't agree with, you have to accept those faults.
How have you found living on your own?
Well, it's been new because I'm used to a community, a boarding school community, a lot of good Christian friends around. Getting used to your own company is something I've had to learn. It's quite cosy. It's not a bad place at all. The rain comes through the window. You should see it when it's shut as well. But apart from that, it's my place. I don't have to change it for other people. I've been used to sharing a study with another bloke. I love sharing with the bloke, but you know, half of it was mine and half was his. But this is just me. This the character of this room.
Torch Trust for the Blind has a manor house at Fleckney in Leicestershire, where partially sighted and blind people can learn domestic skills with a view to achieving greater independence. And Janice Morrison, the volunteer from London, has had to adapt to a new environment.
It's totally different to Hackney, and it's difficult to actually get used to. I'm starting to enjoy the actual countryside, and I like going out for walks.
Has all the frost melted?
It's slowly melting. I think as more and more as we tread on it, it melts quicker.
Seems to be a little stream down there, doesn't there?
The canal's empty at the moment because I think they're clearing it out and mending the actual locks.
Yeah. I wonder what it looks like when it's frozen.
It's strange being able to go out in night. You don't have to forever sort of looking over your shoulder and things like that. I mean, in London, if someone smiles at you, you don't smile back. I mean, unless you know them, you just don't. And when I went out for my first walk, someone smiled at me. So I gave them a weird look. I thought, you know, oh, what they're up to. Nah, I sort of smiled back. So I smiled hesitantly. The next person came along and smiled as well. So I thought, yeah, it's okay to actually smile back. Hold on, Kay. Move over a bit, John, that's it. Okay, come on. We've got 5 students living in at the moment. Most of them have been here quite a while, so they've learnt the basic cooking and cleaning skills. So it's just keeping them, make sure they keep in practice and keep on doing it. You okay? It's a bit muddy here, so be careful. Derek, who's walking the dog, is partially sighted, and he's looking for a job at the moment, working with old people. He's very capable in the kitchen, and you don't necessarily need to be in the kitchen with him, just to be around.
What's that noise, Janice?
Well, it's a pump. It must be what's pumping the water out of the canal. Can you see the pump, John? Yeah. John, who was walking next to Derek, he's still has got some sight, but he's losing his sight. He works at Torch about 4 days a week. I was thinking of painting it back again after they've cleaned it up. Kay's up in the flat, and she's ready to be moved out. She's been ready for about 6 months, and it's just the waiting around finding something suitable.
I found it very, very hard when I first came up here. I used to, you know, get very tired really, and you know, I just found it generally difficult. The Careforce volunteers that we've had in the past 3 years have been very nice indeed. I've got on quite well with them. I do all my own shopping and my own washing, and as a blind person, things tend to take slightly longer because, you know, you have to go over things more than once. Just like when I'm cleaning up after the meal, when I'm wiping my work surfaces down, I have to go over them a few times and make sure that they're really clean.
She writes lots of articles, and I come up and I read over them, check the spelling mistakes and correct it for her and tell her what the right ones is, and also read them over. Some of them she gives to the church magazines, and then others she just keeps for herself. I've read your latest article, Beauty in Darkness. I thought it was really good. You only made a couple of spelling mistakes though, so I'll just read it through and then I'll point out the mistakes as we go through. Right. There's been many a time when I've had people ask me things like, do you ever wish you could see? It's a shame you're blind, isn't it there? Isn't there anything they could do so you could have your sight back? Well, I can tell you this much. If I could suddenly see, I'd be a wreck. Now, wreck you spell R-E-C-K, and it's got a W on it. Oh, okay. I think the thing I'm really learning is how to actually love people as God loves them. And it's only really by God's Spirit you actually learn how to love the person as God loves them, and to see the person as God sees them, and not to try to love them with your own strength, but with God's strength.
February 1987. The volunteers have left their placements for 2 days to attend a refresher course at the conference centre.
You've been in your job 6 months or so now, and we'd like to hear from you. Are there any things which, looking back over the past month...
This is the last time the volunteers will be together. Their year with Careforce will come to an end in the summer.
Well, I mean, there has been a lot of concentration on inner city problems and very little said about the very specific problems of dealing with the mentally handicapped. I mean, I've gone to my job in working with mentally handicapped with absolutely no training and no idea of what I was going to face, and I found that very hard.
There have been certain times during my time at Boons Park when there have been people who I felt have been quite seriously mentally disturbed. There's one particular chap who had the habit of hefting a cleaver, which he used to chop sticks with, and to mutter about chopping someone's head off. With people like that, I've never been able to feel comfortable.
I think the Careforce employer has got responsibilities, first of all, to the task of ministry that they're engaged in. Having said that, if you're willing to take on a Careforce volunteer, you're taking on responsibilities to the volunteer, not just to get all you can out of them, which may be a danger, but also to help them, on the one hand, contribute to what God is doing already, and on the other hand, to stretch themselves.
I find it quite easy to chat about gardens and houses and things like that, but I'm very aware that when I go in, particularly if they're Christians, that I'm a sort of spiritual toddler. So in a way, I think I've got more to get from them in the way of wisdom and experience and so on than I'm actually giving.
You wanted to get away from the ivory towers of Oxford, you said. Have you done that?
Yeah, I think so, pretty thoroughly, yeah.
What's the hardest thing?
I think just trying to get used to a new situation, not hanker back to the old carefree student days, but just get down to the work, even when it's a bit grim and you can't really see much hope in a situation, just to stick at it and have faith that God can do an awful lot that I can't.
Well, to sum up, I'd say it's been mind-blowing. You've had to think about so many different things, so many aspects of your faith which you thought you had sorted out, but how to spend your time, your money, and your attitudes towards other people.
I'm really changed. I'm more confident and more sure of what I believe. That can't be bad.
I'm not sure how much I've actually changed, but I've come aware of things that I do because it needs to be done, and I'm willing to actually do it.
This is the life.
I hear the volunteers are going to do a cabaret tonight, Janice. What's your contribution going to be?
Take up Central Television. Cut!
I'm glad of the experience. I'm glad to have been up in the north because I haven't really lived in the north before. And I'm going to university to read English at Durham. Can't get away from the north, you see. And I think as far as my faith is concerned, I'm more convinced than ever that it's real.